Good evening. This is the February 3rd, 2026 meeting of the Wenham Select Board at 6:30. We're very pleased to be back in our home base here at Wenham Town Hall with the big HVAC renovation 99% completed, I guess.
Yeah. I think this is the first.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So welcome back, everybody. And we will be meeting jointly starting at 7 o'clock with the Finance Committee, which is here as well. So present for the Select Board this evening are Karen Anger, Peter Clay, Deirdre Parati, Gary Cheeseman, and me, Ben Timon. And we start the agenda with opportunity for public input. Joe, are we hybrid tonight? Are there Zoom participants at all? Or?
Yes, there's no hands up though.
Okay. Is there anybody here in the room who would like to make public comment? Okay, seeing none, that will bring us to Town Administrator's update and town announcements.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we met, the working group, the Gordon College working group met with Gordon College on Monday, so yesterday. The working group was Peter Clay, Karen Anger, Joe Pestimato, Michelle McGovern, and myself. We met with a group of a similar size with Gordon College, and thought it went really good. Both sides expressed a strong desire to strengthen the relationship between the town and the college. So I thought that went well. I'm sure there are more to follow. I also want to just commend Rich and the DPW guys for a good snow cleanup after a record-breaking snowstorm. I received more emails of thanks and just commending the DPW than any other storm since I've been here. So thanks to those guys. I also want to say a reminder to the public and anybody here that 9 and 54 Maple Street, there's a survey that would like you to participate in. We are working with Essex Greenbelt to procure a conservation easement on 9 and 54 Maple Street, and we're looking for residents' feedback on allowable uses of the conservation land. Nomination papers are due on February 26th. These are on the website, but the planning board has 3 seats up. The Hamilton Wenham Library Trustees, Wenham, there's 1 seat for its a 3-year term. The Regional School District has 3 seats. It's 2 3-year terms and 1 1-year term. The Select Board has 2 seats open, both 3-year terms, and the Water Commission 1 seat in a 3-year term. I also just want to kind of bump back up the 250th Anniversary Committee. We're at about 2 or 3 volunteers right now. We certainly need a couple more so we can get that committee set up and appointed. So if anybody's interested, please reach out and let us know. And that's all I have tonight.
Thanks. I just want to echo on behalf of the board, kudos to Rich Souza and the DPW for handling a very challenging blizzard on the 24th and the 25th and the aftermath of that. I know it's a constant battle between plowing the streets and dealing with residents who are trying to clear their sidewalks and so on. There's a lot of moving parts. And just wanted to extend a reminder to the public as well that in these circumstances, the policy of the board, which the DPW follows, is obviously that streets are going to be cleared first, and then when the DPW can get to sidewalks on main roads and around Bucher School, that they will do that to the best of their ability with limited resources. But again, for the public, there's no guarantee that your street sidewalks are going to be cleared or when they're going to be cleared. It's really the responsibility of private residences and businesses to clear the sidewalks in front of their properties. But again, under the policy, the DPW does tackle those as their resources and conditions permit. And as Steve was saying, there were, I think, a lot of accolades that I received, and I think others received, and Steve did as well, about how ably the DPW performed over the course of this very large storm, including in sidewalk clearance. And so I just wanted to extend again my thanks and commendation to the DPW for the work that they did. And that's all I have. Gary?
There was a excellent show by Barry Machad and Phil Stearns last Thursday at the COA Music in the afternoon. I think they're going to have more cafe music coming up, so it was a packed house, 50 or so people in there, so that's good. And I also had one more thing on the snow that, you know, people can get out to, and get that fire hydrants in front of your house, pitch in and help out on that too.
Deirdre?
Excuse me. Yes, I'll echo those comments and thank Rich Souza and the DPW. I know they worked around the clock, so I appreciate the effort and really thank them for really putting in a tremendous effort. I also wanted to remind everyone that Representative Hannah Bowen is hosting a community conversation this week, Thursday night, February 5th from 6 to 7:30. It will be in Beverly at the Ryall Side Civic Center. And this is a conversation about school funding. I know Eric Tracy is speaking. She'll have others there. We'll be hearing from some experts about the challenges in school funding, and she's also having small working group conversations. So it should be an interesting evening. Encourage people to come out who are interested in the school funding struggles.
Thanks, Peter.
I'd like to echo most of everything you guys say, and I'm going to the Hannah Bowen thing.
Excellent.
You're going to the what?
What she's just talked about down in Beverly.
Great. Thank you. Karen?
Yeah, well, I do echo some of the notes from my fellow colleagues here. I do believe that there's some work that needs to be done regarding safety and our children, regarding snow removal and sidewalks around Bucher. So I do believe that we have to continue to put children and safety first, and hopefully we can find the middle ground and make sure that that is in fact happening.
Okay. Thank you. That moves us to the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve item A on the consent agenda, one-day liquor license for First Church, February 7th from 5 to 9 p.m.
So moved.
Second?
Great. We'll take a roll call. Karen?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Deirdre?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
And Ben is yes. Thank you. Okay, well, it looks like we can skip ahead to some things, right? Because we're not going to have our joint meeting for another
Yeah, so
25 minutes.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely be able to cover easily B and C and then dive into the capital on set 7.
Great. All right, so move to item B, continued discussion and review of warrant article items, which is a matter of old business. Steve, do you want to pick it
A
up?
few updates on this. I'll just run through. We'll start with the articles. So it looks like the tax deferred program is going to be removed for further study by the Board of Assessors. The backyard chickens bylaw may also have to be removed for further study, in addition to the subdivision rules and regulations. Margaret informed me that there will be no zoning bylaw change requests this year at town meeting, that they're rewriting the rules and regulations. It's just a regulation, and any bylaw changes are not going to be ready this year, so that we can pull that down, and that any bylaw changes as a result of this rewrite will be on next year's town meeting. So we've been working closely with KP Law on the rest of these items. The authorization for easement and acquisition has been Kate's project. I don't know, do you want to give a quick update, or do you not have? She's been working hard on this.
Yep, we've been working hard with the state. The letters of intent just went out, so that is kind of kicking off the whole project. So they just went out yesterday, and we're just chugging along. We are set to hit the ad date, which is in August, and then 4 months after that they will let us know when they're going to start the project. It could be as soon as 4 months after that ad date, so moving along.
So, and the articles that were added to this list that's not here is we are a request to permit the town to host a town meeting outside of the town of Wenham. And a conversation that I thought the board could have tonight is on the, an individual person holding multiple seats on different boards. So I think the intent of this article is to limit certainly elected officials from holding multiple seats, and then also through a bylaw change, which would be two separate articles. One would be special legislation to limit the elected board piece, and then if the board wants to further discuss what boards it deems to be, we'd use the term policy-making boards, but in a sense that's not accurate, because there are, like FinCom, although there is currently a restriction to serve on FinCom and any other board, but they're not necessarily policy-making boards, but they have high influence in an advisory capacity to the select board. So for the select board to have a discussion, whether tonight or to at least start thinking what boards you want to be affected. So in the sense that what boards can only have one person have the seat, and you can't have a seat on multiple boards. Is there any thoughts to that specifically? Last time we had talked about Board of Assessors, FinCom, obviously, that's already in there. Possibly Board of Health. From an election standpoint, we're looking at.
Planning board.
Yep, so that would be the planning board, select board. I believe those are our only.
School committee?
School committee, but we can't govern the school committee. The school committee would be, the makeup of the school committee would be made up through the regional agreement, but it would, by preventing a select board member or a planning board member from sitting on any other board, you can't, so you can say that if you're on the school committee, you can't be on a Wenham board, but not that you can't be vice versa. So.
Can you just restrict it to the select board? You can't have both approving a budget line.
Who?
A select board member also serving as a school committee member.
Yeah, it would prevent it, but like indirectly, because you can't be on a Wenham board and the school committee.
Although I did ask that language be included in the regional agreement also.
Yeah, and
I don't know where that went.
Yeah,
but-
so basically, where that is now is Hamilton was originally they were on board with it, but then they were a little bit hesitant because they have a difficulty. I mean, not too dissimilar from us, in getting enough people to get involved to fill all the seats that are open. So inevitably, if someone's interested in getting involved, they end up being on 2 seats. So, and Lauren brought up the point that we can accomplish what we want to accomplish through, restriction in our boards. And then, so that way Hamilton's free to hold multiple seats, and we can still accomplish us, but you can't be on a planning board, select board, or school committee at the same time. You can only hold one seat out of the 3 boards.
I would echo Hamilton's concern. We have enough problems with open seating, and going into this April, we have 10 seats, you said? Potentially open to be elected for, if not,
Probably
those
something
are.
like that.
That's
And a
not-
lot of the COA, the assessors, you don't have to be voted on, they're just open seats, they're having a hard time filling. So if we can have as many less restrictions as possible, I think that'll make sure that people are moving forward with signing up and volunteering.
So some of the seats that are up this year are re-election. So it's 2 different things. They're not necessarily vacant seats.
Well, they're
It's
vacant
also
because no one
re-election.
won the election yet. Just people.
Right, but that doesn't coincide with what you were just saying. That's not because we don't have people. That's people running for re-election. The idea of this article
Well,
is...
no one's running for the re-election. There's 2 open seats. Should somebody then want to apply for it,
I
they're
think
more
what
than
they're
welcome
saying
to.
is that there's an incumbent in those seats.
Right.
So we have two
Would
open
likely see-
select board.
Two open select board.
One of them happens to be Deirdre, and I'm guessing she's probably gonna run again.
Yeah.
I am, actually, now that you mention it. But the point of the article is to limit conflict of interest. That's the point of the article.
What, I think if we put this forward to the voters at town meeting, it will need to specify exactly which boards are.
Yes, we do.
So has that been, have we finalized that? I don't think we have.
I think that, you know, kind of started the discussion, and I think, at least from what I've gathered so far, is the definites are, at least from the way it's been presented, and the board hasn't necessarily agreed on whether the article is gonna go there or not, but right now we're writing it that the elected boards, you can only hold one seat on the elected boards. Right, so planning board, school committee, select board, you can only be on one of those boards at a time.
Aren't assessors elected as well?
No.
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 They're, so they were up until 2 years ago, but now we're migrating to an appointed. So then it leaves you with pretty much all the other boards and committees, you know, including the CPC really to some extent, because they do the appointed component, as to what, really leaving it up to the select board to decide which boards they want to limit participation in.
Board of Health is currently appointed or elected?
Currently appointed. We're,
Transition.
I mean, yeah, it's like, the reason why I hesitate is because,
It's going to be appointed, okay.
yeah,
'Cause
you're
I-
gonna wait till it's a phase out, so we're in the first phase out right now,
Right.
so coming up this year,
Yeah.
the select board will appoint the first member to the Board of Health
Right.
and Board of Assessors in its history.
Okay, because I know the discussion isn't purely an elected versus appointed discussion,
Correct.
but I would advocate not including the Board of Health in this, because I think that's one board in my mind that the most important thing is to have qualified people on the Board of Health, and if there happens to be a member of another board who has health expertise and wishes to put his or her name forward to be appointed to the Board of Health, I wouldn't want to force that person off of another board. So to me, that's one board I would personally not want to have as part of this prohibition, but that's the only board in my mind that I would want to insulate from
So how about,
potential conflicts of interest.
how about zoning board of appeals?
I would include ZBA.
Board of Health is general consensus.
I don't know what other people think.
Yeah, I don't think you have the Water Commission, Cemetery Commission, the
right,
Board of
Water
Health,
Commission, that's
that
another-
are all more technical-oriented groups.
Right.
So I would hope that they would be, attract those folks and not be duplicative to the other boards, members. But I do see, we've had in the past members of, the Board of Health and other committees that, it can create tension if you're bringing up a policy to a board that you're also sitting on. And I think that's one of the considerations here, is if we can move to a situation where people have one seat on one board, that way, for the key ones like planning, planning, ZBA, FinCom, and Select Board, those I think should be isolated absolutely to one person. And the others, I think, are flexible, but I would certainly prefer that everyone just have one seat and do that job well, and that other people step up to the slots.
I agree with that.
Agreed.
All right, so Water Commission is something I forgot, that's an elected board, so that will be not included. Makes sense. Scott?
Yeah, I think, because they're called commissions, both cemetery and water have traditionally had kind of their own little finance area, and perhaps CPC falls in that area too, that they got the, pot of money that they're looking after, but they have to come forward to other boards for the final approval. Likewise, Affordable Housing Trust, I would not want to have, other than the designated one, to have people on multiple seats bringing that forward to planning or to plan or ZBA or
We
whatever.
want multiple seats on that.
Yeah. I think it's, avoid the conflict of interest of person on one board, turning around and voting on what
Right.
they just recommended.
Right, exactly. So I don't know if CPC, if the at-large seat, because CPC is comprised of people from other committees already,
Okay.
but I would want to preserve sort of some independent seats. So I don't know, maybe if we can distinguish the at-large seats from the ones that are designated, if you follow what I'm saying.
Mhm. That makes sense to me. I mean, yeah, large seats, because you would hope that those would be independent people, because there's already so many
Because
folks
there's already
where-
so many
where there's
crisscross, exactly.
pollination, yeah. What about the Conservation Commission?
I think that's another technical
Yeah, technical, but,
expertise.
a lot of money over there too, so,
Mm.
again, if they have to come to the select board with a proposal, like we've had recently, then they really shouldn't be coming forward and saying, here's the document, and then turn around and vote on it as a select board member,
Yeah.
so
So they do a
I'd
good
put them
part
off
on-
limits too.
I do want to just throw in, I realize that all of my colleagues know this already, but since it's relevant to the discussion, that, if there were such a situation where there's a member serving on two boards and one board is bringing something to the other board, the person would recuse him or herself. That would be certainly like the typical remedy to avoid a conflict, but I understand the broader, conflict concerns too.
Especially while we still have some three-member boards, so one excuses, and then
Right.
one doesn't show, and then nothing gets done.
Right.
So, anyhow, enough.
All right, and then the other big one is the date. So Gordon College cannot do the 11th. Their facility is not available on the 11th. They're packed from morning to late at night with sports events. They, because they want it to work out, but the only other weekend day, plus or minus a week from the 11th, so we look a week ahead and a week before, not deviate too far from our town meeting date, if they could do the 4th. So that's kind of back to the original 1st of April. That wasn't a holiday, but it was the day before a holiday.
That is, from a Christianity perspective, the most religious 48 hours of the entire year. I can't imagine hosting something the day before Easter.
Yeah, I think that was part of the rationale for why we, moved it.
What about the Saturday after?
18th out.
They can't do it?
No,
And weeknights.
we're looking at weeknights, and they're gonna get back to us.
That would be the week of April 6th.
Yeah. Because,
To be continued.
And the concern is that if we keep it on the 11th and we have it at Bucher, we could run into the same situation we did a year ago with exceeding capacity.
yeah, exactly. So we're looking at, possibly having to do it twice. The other thing we're looking at and getting prices on is doing it in a tent in Pingree Field. It's not a park, it's not ideal, understood. It's not cheap, but it's likely cheaper than doing it twice. Because we're up against whether if we leave it on the 11th, or we leave it on any day other than, and we do it at the Bucher School, you run the risk of exceeding the capacity and having to cancel and host it at a backup date, which, we have to set anyways, but now you're doing it twice, or, the other way you could do it is, again, you would have to pay to do it twice, but you could leave it on the 11th and do it at Bucher School with the entire warrant minus the budget articles. So then you bring the budget articles back at a separate town meeting when Gordon could do it. Again, probably not.
You're looking at having an override to then spend double the amount of money for half the meeting? I feel like that's a
We can't
pretty,
arrange on a date.
yeah, but from a select board perspective, that doesn't give much confidence in the board itself.
I mean, I think we should either keep it on the 11th and look into doing it at Pingree Park, or do it at Gordon on a weeknight during the week of April 6th if they have it available. That's my feeling, but
I prefer the latter.
you would.
Yeah, because they have all the AV stuff set
Right.
up for us.
And
And I-
it's cold in early April.
It worked well.
And I think we'll find that if we still probably have the numbers from the big tent during COVID, and that was an expensive proposition. I think it was up
Oh,
to
yeah.
$50,000, $60,000.
For the tent rental.
Yeah, for the tent and then the audio setup. And not to mention, whether the ground's going to be frozen or muddy. So I think the alternative weeknight at the Gordon may be the solution this year.
All right, anything else
Nope,
on
that's all I
this
have.
item
That's all I have.
from the board? Any members of the public wish to be heard on town meeting warrant planning items? Seeing no one, that would move us to item C, because it's 6:56. Can we handle C quickly, or should we?
See, it's really,
The same thing.
The same, yeah.
All right, so we've handled that. All right. So, good. So in 3 minutes, we will, or so, we'll welcome the Finance Committee.
There's no David yet.
So why don't we take a 3-minute recess, and we can just stay where we're at and come back at 7.
Quick question for
Yes.
Steve. When do we expect draft warrant articles back from town council?
I'm targeting to circulate a draft with rough commentary on the 10th. For comments.
Do you have the email addresses of the people that we met with yesterday? Peter? Do you have the email addresses of the people we met
I
with?
think the deadline was, I'm looking at Michelle.
Steve
Oh, actually,
I feel like
I think the chair, the vice chair.
I wanted to send a thank you note.
no, the note
We're going to call to order the Hamilton Wenham, I guess just the Wenham Finance and, the Wenham Finance Advisory
Good.
Committee, President Finn Sprague, Bob Papatic, and Jared Ward. We do have a quorum, so I think we're ready to go here.
Great, thank you. So we are now meeting in joint session, and Steve, why don't you take it from here?
Thanks, everybody, for coming out tonight.
You're,
So I-
you're on the thing.
I thought it made some sense to get everybody in the room together and talk through capital. With Jeff's departure, the timeline tightened a little bit and kind of killed two birds with one stone instead of doing two separate presentations and bringing the departments in twice for both the finance committee and the select board, and then to bring them together to come to a final decision on the capital plan. Just try to do it in one night, although the expectation is not that any decisions will be made, but hopefully any of your questions or concerns can be aired out and answered so that you can take further deliberation and come up with a final recommendation. So I wrote that memo really just as, we don't really have to go into it tonight, but I just wanted to kind of frame how capital is funded here in Wenham and, the state of those reserves and funding avenues. And a few years ago, we developed, for the first time, certainly the first time in several years, a 5-year capital plan that kind of got us in the mindset for a little bit of forward thinking and as the capital needs for the town of Wenham. So each year that the town, the way the process goes, the town brings back the 5-year capital plan and also requests to all department heads to bring forward any requests that they need to run their department efficiently. That isn't on the 5-year plan, and then we sit with the Rich Souza and facilities manager Mike Hardy and go through and kind of rejigger the 5-year capital plan along with the requests from the departments. So, one of the things that everybody's noticed is capital expenditures have increased. Good.
Just want to acknowledge, we have our fourth member who's just
Oh.
signed in online, David Doggett, so
Right.
we have 4 out of 5.
Thanks, Finn. So everybody has noticed that the capital expenditures have increased significantly over the last 4 or 5 years. So I think that is really in part twofold. So if you go back to the years prior to the 5th year, so 2022, I believe, back to 2019, the select board used free cash to offset the tax rate. So essentially they were balancing their operating budget with free cash. They also, during those years, they had very minimal to no capital expenditures. So I think in part the uptick is probably from some deferral of projects that were kind of in the, waiting to be done, and with the turnover, took a year or two to kind of come out and figure out, what needed to be done and when, and get them on the capital program and get them done. And in part, the money's there, and when the money is there to spend, it kind of makes an easy decision to, include all the requests instead of taking a harder look. But, as the budget pressures are tightening and discussions are starting to take place, and I've heard, really from both boards that they want to take, kind of a closer look, certainly through the lens of wants and needs of the capital program, and see if there's any place where we can tighten up on the capital spending and try to, use that wants and needs lens. So, with that, I went back and we discussed, in part with Jeff, but he's not here tonight, but we discussed with all the department heads and kind of went over their requests this year and see what we could defer, what didn't need to be done at all, what needed to be done this year. So, with those discussions, I did make some adjustments to the capital list that was originally circulated. I do want to highlight to what we did come up with was that, really everything on here is a need, it may be just not a need this year. So, for example, we have some carpet, and I can go through each change I made, but I think, for example, is carpeting is something that, you know, is needed in some of the offices in Town Hall, is needed in the fire station. You know, they're all ripped up. The police station, you know, wants to match their carpet. But, you know, it's certainly not something that needs to get done this year, but it is important to keep on your radar that it will eventually need to get done if it doesn't get done this year. So going through the list, so with starting with the new ambulance, so talking with the fire chief and deputy fire chief, they've been requesting a new ambulance for some time, and part of, you know, the finance director's role, once they got up to speed, was gonna be Jeff, was to, you know, do a deep dive into, you know, the financials of running the ambulance and how much, you know, it actually makes the town. So, you know, we've decided to, you know, to push that back a year or maybe two, to do a deeper dive into that. And what we did change is, you know, also new news was that the Chevy Silverado 3500 that the fire station has, if you go to the one that looks like this, sorry. Yeah, go all the way to the top. So that fire Chevy Silverado. So that was added and the ambulance was removed. So the reason was we got, and this was, you know, relatively new news, at least to me, was that when they went to have the plow mounted, the frame is no longer safe to carry a plow nor tow a heavy trailer. Bob, you had a question?
Steve, is it fair to ask the people to prepare an analysis for the ambulance when it comes up again, showing the revenue that's generated and how the thing interacts? Because it's not totally just an expense item. It produces revenue.
Yep, that's correct. And that's what we want to see. I think it's fair to ask. That's what we're hoping to be able to provide to not just the boards, but also the taxpayers when they're looking at it, where it isn't just an expense, that it's probably revenue positive. It may make business sense for the town to, you know, expand the operations.
It's not that, that's fine.
All right, so if you keep scrolling down, the next one is with the police station carpet replacement. We've suggested deferring that to a later year. The police station victim interview room and improvement, I had originally intended to defer that this year. I had thought I had identified a grant, which we are still applying for, but it's not guaranteed. So in the event, we will know before town meeting if we got the grant. We have filled out the application. I'll be submitting it tomorrow. And if we don't get it, I do believe that there is a need there for this year, at least for the audiovisual systems, so that we can record the interviews and interrogations and provide those recordings to the courts when requested. And I will bring the chief up, will come up later, and, you know, he does feel strongly the need to rehab that room for a number of different reasons as they pertain to, you know, the police duties and the responsibilities they have to the community. So, and then similarly, if you go to the fire on the third page, the fire carpet replacement, you know, so again, we'll be deferring that in part. Like the fire station carpet is in tough shape, but in part because the fire station, I think, needs, you know, the basement needs to be looked at. There used to be a shooting range. It needs to have a significant lead abatement and demolition. The department, you know, interior certainly needs some renovation outside of the bays. You know, the building certainly is showing its age. And I think this may be, before we start spending money on it, is to start, you know, figuring out what we're going to do with the structure. Like, are we going to continue to utilize as it is now? I know some of the new fire trucks don't, or Chief, is it all the new fire trucks don't fit in the bays?
Yeah, they have to be specialty made.
But they have specialty made fire trucks, or buy them on the used market, because all the new equipment does not fit in our bays. They're too large. So again, but there's conversations around the fire station that are bigger than just redoing the carpet and things like that I think needed to take place before we spend any money on those. So with that shaved about $150,000 off.
By the way,
What's that?
so Steve, if I'm not mistaken, Ipswich, like a couple years ago, bought a new fire engine, and then they had,
ladder truck and they had to park it outside.
yeah, but then they had to build a separate
Yes.
building for it.
They took delivery without backing it in.
So and as far as the discussion moving forward, I think a lot of these projects are relatively straightforward. However, I believe there are some specific questions around certain projects. Chief DiNapoli, I don't know if you want to, we'll start off with the police. I know you have a couple requests. I thought, because each year we ask the department requests what they need to do to run their department successfully, and we take seriously their recommendations as the professional in that department. And so I wanted to hear where the chief had a number of projects deferred. I just wanted to hear, just so the residents know, like, what they're deferring beyond just the dollar amounts.
Yeah, I mean, I can start in.
Anything yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of the, just to go over all the capital requests, just so I can make sure I'm not missing any of them. As far as the tasers, that's a second year of a lease payment that obviously was agreed upon at the outset from the first payment with the purchase that was made. And that's an absolute officer safety and public safety need based on, it's a less lethal force option that can quell a situation to keep the officer safe and to mitigate and avoid greater harm and injury to the officer and a person if needed. So that second lease payment is beyond vital to get that done. The weapons that we added there last year or this past year, we had numerous malfunctions that had been previously presented at prior budgets to replace the weapons. Just because of malfunctions and the costs associated with what would have needed to get those weapons fixed. It just wasn't prudent and didn't make sense. So we were able, it didn't end up being a capital item. We pulled that out of our training line. However, the remaining money in our training line could not account for the full purchase of the weapons, which left a handful of weapons that were a different type of weapon, a different caliber, so they didn't match up. Not to mention the move over time was a cost savings because the ammunition in the newer weapons that we transitioned to was cheaper. So the ammunition required for training, which we do have obviously mandatory regular training, it will save money over time, not to just on the costs of fixing them, but on the ammunition costs itself. The two cruises that were presented, Steve and I want to thank Steve for taking the time to really have a good dialogue back and forth and to understand kind of what I'm sure all the department heads will echo my thoughts on it, where we are, and to allow that discussion to take place and to be open and respectful. And we took a look at the two cruises that were brought forward. One is a marked cruiser, which the patrol officers in some situations are using them 24 hours a day. Not just in the patrol, but for traffic details, for training, for court. They're getting a lot of use. I do have the breakdown. My administrative assistant did a phenomenal job actually today. I asked her for an up-to-date breakdown of the maintenance costs for all our cruises over the last fiscal year and then year to date from July 1 until now. So I do have those numbers if you need them. I won't bore you with them, but quite a bit of maintenance costs were in place for the different vehicles, and I have that breakdown. So what we did based on my discussion with Steve is to shelf the administrative vehicle request to next year with the understanding, I can't predict what the maintenance costs will be. I can honestly, as we all know, understand and know that when it is traded in, the trade-in value is going to go down, and Maintenance costs might be high, may not be. I don't know. I knock on wood and I hope they're not, but we'll have to wait and see and address it accordingly. As far as the carpets, that's already been discussed. We'll move forward with that down the road as the other town buildings are doing the same, and we'll address that if and when we can next year or the year after. And then the other area, I don't believe I forgot any, was the interview room that Steve alluded to. And there's a lot more to this. To think of it as only a cosmetic item would definitely not do it justice with the understanding of what's needed for this room. Right now, the current room the audiovisual equipment is not working properly. So we're running into a circumstance with the court requests for this from the DA's office for the recordings of a victim witness interview. We can't provide that right now. It's a major problem. So that's something that's an absolute need. Not to mention the room itself, and I'd be happy to show anyone if they are interested. I know Steve and Dave came over, Dave Doggett, when he was at the building. It's a poured concrete floor with a crack down the middle, and it's cinder block walls in this room. So if we have somebody who's unfortunately a victim coming into our station to make a statement or to talk with our officers or our detective, this is the room they're walking into. And I don't think it presents the right tone, the right environment for someone when they come into our station to be in that structure, in that setting. So that's something that is very important. It is not, for the cosmetic purpose, it isn't that simple. It's very, very important. Not to mention the panic button in that room for the officers. We are an accredited police department through the Mass Accreditation Coalition. It's required to have panic equipment in that room for the officer or the detective. And that's a compliance need, if you will. The soundproofing of the walls will help the audiovisual equipment work more effectively. And then also the ability as a supervisor, myself, the deputy chief, any of the sergeants, to observe an interview without being in the room. This equipment would also provide for that as well, which is very vital for another officer to be not in the room necessarily, but to be able to view it and make recommendations on how to better effectively handle a situation, which is part of, unfortunately, what we have to do. And I'd be glad to answer any other questions or better explain the quote that I received as well. Yes, sir.
First of all, thank you for offering to provide the numbers, because the committee was looking for that in support of the comments that were put in the write-up. The question with regard to the audiovisual in the victim interview room, the bulk of that is audiovisual equipment. What alternatives were looked at? Were there lower cost alternatives that were rejected? Because some of the members of the committee here have suggested that seems like an awful high number for performing a basic audiovisual function.
Yeah, and it's there aren't a lot of companies that do it. We looked around a lot. We ended up, the quote that we got is Hunt's, which specializes in this. I don't have other quotes to share with you. It breaks down line by line, and I don't want to bore you with it going by each line, but as far as the cameras, the installation, the microphone, the power supplies, the switches, the indicator lights, all these other things, and then the software that comes along with it that makes it compatible with our current operating system, our computer system, and then the soundproof walls is part of that quote as well. But no, I don't have another quote with that.
With regard to the generator, which is still on the list, I think, how often has that been used? I know it's 20 years old, but I have.
That would be a, so
Really
that's a facilities ad. So that is like.
Wrong person?
Yeah, so that's basically dead. That's something Mike and Rich added. So both the generator at the police, and there's another generator.
So those are being withdrawn?
No, those were added by facilities because they don't operate, and they're the emergency power for the town.
So we can table that until Rich comes up to describe it?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, that's it. Okay. One question that's related to this, because free cash is generated by budget performance, actual to budget. The record for the police department is at 98.4% actual of budget over the last 4 years.
Okay.
Is there some reason, that you're able to budget that closely?
As far as what my current requests are, can you just better explain that? I'm sorry.
No, I'm just trying, within the context of free cash. Free
Okay.
cash comes from the operating budget,
Okay,
and it comes from two places. It comes from low budgeting on the revenue side, and it comes a little bit from high budgeting on the expense side. And I was just noticing it when I looked at the historical record that the police department comes very close to spending its budget, and I was just curious as to how you folks manage that.
yeah, I mean, I drive the offices crazy. I'm pretty fiscally conservative. And any of our changes have really been, the salary end of it is specific to our collective bargaining agreement. So it is what it is as far as the union, how it's broken down by that. The other changes that we've made have been minimal, specific to the contractual services that have not been exuberant. We've been able to kind of stay within the constraints of where we need to be, so.
And then just to comment on the audiovisual, procurement law would require us to get 3 quotes. So the estimate is intended to be conservative, and we would procure the lowest quote by law to get the equipment. And then any proceeds that were left over, if the appropriation was over, would then be reappropriated to future capital projects through town meeting.
Gary?
Well, I think certainly in the, I've seen the room also, and clearly it dates from original building design, and we know that policing is in a different era now. And as you say, Wenham needs to have the facilities that provide the information and support to the courts, as well as the, as you say, consideration for witnesses and so forth. So I think, that's money well spent, and need to get it done. We can't be falling behind on issues like that.
I agree with that.
Karen?
I have a quick question. So I am understanding that we took, or money was taken out of training to update the weapons.
Correct.
So personally, that I'm a little disappointed in that, because I think that we have a younger staff, and I would really love them to be able to allocate the certain trainings or be able to really focus on career development and be able to do that. Is there a way that as a town that can be increased in an additional walkthrough, so that is that amount of money that was taken from training, which I specifically think the officers need,
Yeah.
in addition to the weapons? Do you know that exact amount that was taken? And is there a way that can?
Well, I think what you're getting at is this is an in-budget year expense that came up as a dire safety issue, and we had to replace the weapons as soon as possible. And our emergency reserve is low, and the money was in training, and we had to make the concession and decision to purchase the weapons, given the safety concern for all the officers, to make sure they were procured this year. And that's why the capital plan, that with the remaining weapons, is for the on-call or part-time officers. So it's not an ongoing, next year the training will be, refunded. There'll be no weapons spent out of it.
Okay,
It was a
that was my
one-time
main
emergency.
concern.
It was a one-time emergency
That's fine.
expenditure.
No, and I appreciate the
concern.
question. I really do, because I agree with you 1,000%. It's so important, and that's one of our goals, to get the best training that we we can for all our officers. And not only, you try to meet it halfway, it's got to be mutually beneficial. It's a want and a desire for something the officer's interested in, but it is also benefits the agency and the municipality as well. So you try to meet it right in the middle, and that makes a happy officer, and a happy officer is a productive officer. So
That's fine. I guess my concern was more, was that offset by
No,
money taking away from the
I
officers?
appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Chief? I'm gonna
Great.
assume that there aren't any hands up on Zoom. I don't see any on the screen, so Chief, thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, who's next, Steve?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone has the questions for the fire. I know they have some training that they have to get to. So if you guys have any questions, or do you want to talk about the truck at all, Chief? I think we're on the same page on it. On the ambulance and the fire truck, the pickup truck, right?
Good evening. So on the ambulance, we can defer that for 1 year, or possibly 2. I would prefer 1 year, but it's, we try and put the ambulance in a reserve status after 10 years. That's just maintenance-wise, everything. And so we deferred that, and we put a pickup truck in that we need. Thankfully, Rich Souza let us borrow a pickup truck during the whole storm, and we actually used it to get a patient out of a house, because we were no way getting into their driveway. So that's the one thing. It's about, it's gonna reduce it by what, about 164,000 from the ambulance to the pickup. And the pickup is gonna be total of 86,000, and that's gonna come, the whole plow setup. It's gonna have a king cabinet for any crews that we gotta transport anywhere. It's not used just for plowing, it's used for command post, it's used for everything. It'll have a cap on it. And it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, just to highlight why they need a plow is because, well, really 2 reasons. One, we have a lot of private roads in town and long driveways that can be unplowed. So for them to access the residents, they need to have a plow truck, which is why it was on the other one. And when we were told we can't, because the frame is rusted out, we can't mount it anymore. That was one need. And then also the DPW, and this is something that's been going on for a long time in Wenham, but on the heavy snowstorms, the fire department chips in and helps with it's the fire lot and the police lot.
Yes.
And sometimes over here, when the heavy snow, the smaller storms, the DPW can maintain these lots, but the larger storm, like what we just had, the fire chips in and helps out on these 2 or 3 town lots to kind of take that off the DPW's plate to focus on the streets.
And also on the apron, we have to keep up with the snow once it gets 2 inches. Because if we get a pack of 1 inch, the ladder truck cannot come out of the station, it'll actually rub. That's how close it is. Yeah.
Steve, just for fun, if we were to get a new ambulance, what is the anticipated revenue in a year?
Well, it would probably be, if we were to actually take it to 2 calls at once and like a motor vehicle accident, you're looking at probably another 25% on top of what we get. Right, like this last year, it's about 169,000. So about 25 on that. But it comes down also, we gotta find a place to store it, which hopefully we could find the building at the iron rail.
Right. And that was the other piece was, and not only do I want to look into the finances more closely, but also storage location, because was one of the places that was identified was the garage behind the iron rail.
Yep.
But the iron rail is currently being reviewed for potential change in use and even possibly disposal. So that if that was to take place, then that would create an issue with where are we going to put the second ambulance.
There's always something.
In my brain, I was trying to figure out if it makes sense to do both.
And we can look around, we can do an analysis on all this and by next year.
That's why we wouldn't have the money to be like, this
Yeah.
is what it brings in, whether we have to make separate
Yeah.
storage for it, the cost of the storage, and all that. And we can.
Yeah, we can have all that
of a
done by
full-
next year
We just don't have a
easily,
full
so.
package to present, so it's a big expenditure.
And Chief, this is David Dodd on the line. Sorry to just jump in, but I believe you had some estimates for the costs, from estimated inflation of waiting year, as well as just the overall lead time for how long it would take to get the ambulance on hand. Is it possible to just provide those? I know they're very rough estimates, but
Yes, it would be about, next year would probably be anywhere from 275, probably roughly 275, and it would be a lead time of about a year, year and a half.
What's changing between now and then? Is it, you've gotten advanced, information from the manufacturer that they're increasing prices, or is there requirements?
Well, every time we've done this, it's actually gone up about that amount, what would you say, about 10% every year.
10 to 15%
Yeah.
increase on anything fire or EMS related.
Yeah.
One ambulance that we had looked at in October, when we had got the actual first quote, it would not hold it for us, but it actually went up another $7,000 on January 1st.
Yeah.
So that is kind of
Anticipation.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Chief. Were you saying something, Gary?
Nope.
We've got a fifth member, Sarah Bishop is now on,
Okay.
signed in as well.
And I just want to say, Sarah, I just got your email, and I'm sorry for all folks aware, the door auto locked on us, so Michelle went out and took care of it, and Sarah was waiting outside to get in, and I just saw the email, and she is now home, viewing from home, so apologies for that mix-up. I think we went back to the old cycle with the door auto locks, because we haven't been meeting here in Town Hall for 6 months. This is the first meeting back, and we found the little wrinkle there. It was overlooked.
No worries, thank you.
All right, appreciate it.
No way,
Okay, great, thanks.
no way to treat our new members.
I agree.
Nothing
I agree.
personal, Sarah.
Our bad.
I didn't take it personally.
All right, who is next up?
I think, I don't know, does the committee have, either committee or board have any specific questions? I'm not sure if you want
I'd like
to
to hear a little
spend
more
the
about
time
the-
and go through all of them, or?
I think, I would like to hear about the generator one.
Okay.
It sounds like there's a little more story here.
So as far as the generator at the police station, so I don't know if it's noted in there, but it is 20-plus years old. I know there's been breakdowns frequently, and the company that services it for us is having trouble finding parts because of the age. Speaking with the chief, he did mention that they have to have a working generator for their accreditation. But I'm not sure exactly what questions you may have, but that it's becoming an issue keeping it going due to many breakdowns, but also the time it takes to get parts that the service company takes to get those in stock.
And
How
also,
often is it used?
So the only time it is used is when the power goes out. There is a monthly test each
right.
month, but so there is no other use that I'm aware of other than, there being a power outage. And
No, I was asking how often you've experienced power outages, because I know it varies quite a bit across the town.
I'd have to ask the chief that question, how often this side or, his particular building goes out.
and
Can you
I will just add quick to part of the reason why Mike was saying that, I believe it was 2 cycles ago, it wouldn't, as a monthly test, and I think it was 2 as the start of the winter, it wouldn't start, and they had to come out to fix it, and there was a severe rodent infestation as the weather got cooler. So they did some like temporary fixes to limp it along, get us through the end of the year, but it's been a problem for a long time, and, and now we were hopeful that we could clump it along, but I think it's time to replace it now.
So this must cover, this covers just the police station, not the adjoining fire station?
That's just for the police station.
So we have a second one at the fire station?
I believe there is, yes.
Is there any interest in studying to see whether or not they can be, you could buy a
2 for 1
significantly
cheaper.
larger one that covers both? Because for $42,000, I think most residents would look at that and say, you know, my smaller house requirement is gonna be a $15,000 or $20,000 generator, right? So this must be substantially larger. There must be more regulations because it's for safety equipment.
Correct.
But it's also right next to the fire department, which you can imagine if the power goes out at the police station, it's probably gone out at the fire station.
Yeah, that would make sense. So I'd have to look into if they sister each other ever. If, you know, if that kicks on, can that run power over to the fire station? That'd be a good Mike question. But we could look into, you know, if we were to get 2 that were similar, would it be a better price, you know, is it 60,000 to get 2 of them? And we could look into that as well.
Right. When you're having had to replace a generator recently, the generator itself is one component, and then all the switching equipment in the building is another.
Correct.
And so, usually you don't have to replace the switching equipment unless there's been a substantial change or expectation.
An upgrade, and
Right.
yeah, yes.
So this is just the generator, not doing underground digging, it's not doing
No,
upgrading service or not upgrading systems or monitoring software, it's just for the piece of equipment.
Correct.
So,
yes,
and the installation, obviously. So.
yes. Yep, which has to be done by a licensed electrician under prevailing wage, so that adds up, you know, a little.
Yeah,
But no.
prevailing wages. But we can look, we'll look to see if it makes sense to power both, and like to quit switching
Yeah.
and wiring to get over to the other building, what that entails, and come back.
They're relatively close to each other.
Yeah, no, it's certainly a fair point. We can take a look.
Is there
Great.
any?
Thanks, Rich. No other
I don't have
questions?
any
Looks like. Okay.
Thank you.
Is that for all the facilities? Because I have the facilities list. I don't know where you are.
I think unless there are any specific questions
Sure.
on DPW capital items besides the generators.
Yeah, I mean, I can go through them real quick, just if folks have any questions, you can stop me. So the DPW, it wasn't on the capital plan. It's a relatively large request, as we found some pretty significant water damage when the stucco wall started bulging out. We didn't realize the extent of it, so it's about a $40,000 fix. Gutters, we knew water was a problem, so the gutters for $4,100 to divert the water away from the wall, where it was on the 5-year plan, because we knew water was a problem, but the damage we were not aware of, so that was identified.
Is
And
it
that got
this
added to the
building,
capital
or is
plan.
it the
No,
DPW
the
building?
DPW garage.
Garage. We put another one that wasn't on the 5-year plan, and I believe it was more just kind of looking at it and seeing, feeling like it was probably time, although, it could wait, but is the maintenance garage and bathrooms at Pingree. They're pretty run down. A lot of items are broken and worn. Again, I think it's just, a level that the expectation of the town probably, would expect their facilities to be in a bit better condition. Rich put together a quote for $7,500 to basically revamp the building with new trim and soffits and bathroom materials, hand dryers, things like that, kind of modernize it. Nothing fancy, but just kind of clean it up a little bit. The COA, this is a request from facilities and Jim from the COA. So it's both the basement floor and basement painting and the basement water heater, all of which were on the 5-year plan. Jim's been asking for the basement to be revamped.
Yeah, I was gonna say, those 2, maybe not the water heater, but the 2 were deferred last year.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I know
the
that he's asked
floor
for
and the
that every
walls.
year since I've been here.
Yeah.
And that's been 4 years. He does want to expand some, like I think exercise routines and things like that, to do additional services, run additional classes for the seniors in the basement, to give them some floor space. Right now it's original to the building, asbestos tiling that's all chipping up. It's water damage down there. The wall, its ceiling is like half collapsed, and paint's peeling off the walls, peeling down and stuff from the moisture. So, that's something that we feel it affects a relatively large group of an underserved portion of the population, and it has been being asked for a long time, and it's always getting deferred, so we're putting it forward again. The water heater is exceeded life expectancy. It is on the 5-year plan. It's rusted and corroded, and it's time to replace before it rusts out in the bottom and we have a big mess. The other one, this is actually something that I added, and with, Rich and I have been talking, is the DPW facilities, something has to be done down there eventually. We don't have a bathroom to have a female DPW employee. We don't have a changing room for a female DPW employee. The buildings are relatively old, and we're looking at both in terms of services to the community and the continuation of the DPW, that looking to the future is we really need to be able to operate. That's the reason why Sheila, who's the admin, is here in town hall instead of down at the DPW to help serve the residents when they come in with their bulk waste or questions about salt and stuff like that. That kind of they go down to the DPW, then they're referred over back to town hall. But it's because we can't have a female employee down there. And so we're looking at alternatives to that. We don't know how much it's going to cost. We've looked at options that range anywhere from like $3 million or $3 million to $10 million. And we're looking at requesting the select board to sponsor an article that establishes a building stabilization fund, and requesting on this capital plan to take $50,000 of free cash and start to get that funded. The intent was to build a small pot of money over the next 4 years to come back to town meeting to request them to release the funds to do actually the engineering and planning for the building, because a project like that, is a significant amount of planning and it's costly, and you want to be able to likely be funded by some sort of a debt exclusion. And if the town does endorse the project, we need to be able to bring back to town meeting real schematics and real estimates and design, and that takes time. So basically it's a two-stage approach. This would be able to fund the planning and engineering and cost estimating to bring to town meeting to get the permission to pursue a debt exclusion.
So this has been discussed a little bit at the FinCom. One of the things that I think the select board would want to consider, we do have a stabilization fund that's a general fund, right? And so, as you're considering releasing money from that, you do need to get, a supermajority of the population to release it, right? And if you do decide to establish a building stabilization fund, you may want to decide whether you put restrictive language that's specific to this particular project that you just described, or if it's more for buildings stabilization fund that allows you a little more flexibility for what you're planning on using it for. I assume that this is another case where you need to get 2/3 of the populace to.
Yeah, well, I think you only need on like a building stabilization fund, a restricted stabilization fund is just a simple majority to release the funds. And I think at least my preference would be to not tie it directly to the DPW building. Like I said, the fire needs to be looked at. Again, and you don't have to, you can stop funding it at any time. I think we have a plan on the horizon that we're trying to save for, and not have to come back in 3 or 4 years and ask the town for $200,000 to help us plan for it. It's kind of like, well, we've saved you have saved the $200,000. Now would you allow us to access it? Never. And then maybe we switch gears and start looking at the fire department and do the same thing. Just thinking out loud.
We have, potentially some major development that will be proposed in this area. Across the street, there may be a proposal coming forward there from a private sector owner. And obviously, we're a long way away from knowing how the iron rail site redevelopment, is going to unfold. But I think we probably, as those types of larger scale proposals make their way down the pike, we should probably begin to think creatively and work with some of the permitting boards on linkage ideas and, seeing whether there can be some private development monies contributed towards something like a upgraded DPW building, given that there truly would be a linkage between the impacts of a development like that on town services.
Right.
And the amount of investment that those types of entities would be putting in. So I'm not at all, critical of the idea to start saving $50,000 specifically for the DPW, but it triggered that thought in my mind that we probably should start thinking about those kinds of opportunities and potential linkage payments from developers. Gary?
I would add in also that certainly this is a generational change in the buildings too, that just as the schools have encountered problems that, our buildings, especially fire station, is 2 generations old. And I think the citizenry just needs to realize that we need to step up and not fix, but update to current standards the facilities that we have in town, both from requirements that come down from the federal and state levels for professionals, but also for the safety of our folks. And, examples that we've seen roll back, so, the firing range in the police station and the fire station, year after year gets rolled back. We need to step up and address, the environmental hazard like that. And the same thing, I'm glad to see that we got the COA basement on there too, because these things that, they just linger, they're easy to put off, but they really need to get done.
Well, actually segueing from that, just a clarification. I'm in favor of investing in the COA building, but I thought that we actually can't use the downstairs level for programming because it's not ADA compliant and there's not access.
Jim.
Is that true?
He seems to think that you can, it's just going to limit the folks that can access it because the building is existing.
So it's like grandfathered?
It's already finished space, we're just renovating.
So it's sort of grandfathered in and exempted?
I mean, I'll double check, but we had that discussion, and that was my understanding.
I mean, that changes the calculus for me, because I think that's a benefit if we can use it for programming, but
Yeah,
I thought in our prior year conversations, that was one of the issues.
In prior years, the concern was we could do so much, at least last year with, the FinCom member escapes me. You remember?
Sorry?
Who was the finance committee member who left
Dano?
last year?
Dano.
What's that? Not Dano. He moved to Essex, I think.
Jeff?
What's that?
Jeff Calder.
No. He's here for a short time. But anyways, he was a proponent of the COA, a big supporter of the COA. And his concern, this is the reason why I got pulled off last year, was that we should be doing more and we should add an elevator so that it can be accessed by all. And that it needed to be studied more. And Jim doesn't really support going, it doesn't really lend itself that well to, do we have the space to add an elevator?
Yeah, I think it's probably more in the Rich Maloney wheelhouse, but my understanding is when you alter an existing building and it's 20%, I'm not sure if there's a calculation where it's square foot and also cost that you're putting into, then you have to upgrade to compliance, where these these 2 small projects wouldn't trigger
get to that.
So,
okay.
Talking with Jim, it sounds like we can do that, and he'd be able to offer more down there. So that's the way I understand. Small projects like this.
David Harnish.
Oh, right.
Thank you.
Good job. All right, thanks, Rich. That's helpful.
That probably would be worth getting Rich Maloney's confirmation on,
Yeah, for sure.
on whether the proposed changes fall beneath the trigger for ADA compliance work.
And the only other DPW specific is they're also replacing a 2014 plow truck with 127,000 miles, so.
Yep.
That's it for DPW and facilities requests.
Well, the only other thing, so I had, and correct me if they're not on the list, still the Chapter 90 supplement, 50,000
Oh,
for
yeah, that's
that.
right, that's a standard, you're right. All right, so that, yep, go ahead, sorry.
And a fire, was a fire water heater on
Yeah,
there?
fire,
That's at 40,
fire water heater.
4,600?
Yeah, so that's the same thing as the COA that was on,
Yeah.
on the 5-year plan.
This one's a 21-year-old water heater.
And just to highlight that the Chapter 90 supplemental funds has been traditionally, I believe, a few years ago it was 120, then it was brought to 100.
No, so
It's always been at 100.
it's, when I first got here, it was 95.
All right.
And then we dropped it to 50, the last, this might be year 3 of 50.
All right. So it's been cut effectively in half with the,
Yes.
what is it, the,
Well, the fair share,
Fair share,
as well as our Chapter 90 funds were increased last year. We expect them to remain, so they're, historically, they're around 153. Last year, we got 250. We hope to get 250 again. Healy has like a 3-year plan that she put in, and as long as there's no federal changes there, then we should hopefully, again in July-ish, August, we'll get 250 again. So that's why we made the conscious decision to lower the supplement here.
All right, any other questions for Rich? Okay.
I have a different question, a different topic, so, thank you.
okay, thanks, Rich.
Thanks.
Not me?
Not for you.
Finn?
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
So, we've got the 5-year plan listed on here as the FinCom has looked at other sort of plans that have come through, like the long-term master plan, that sort of thing. I was wondering if the select board could talk a little bit about, how authoritative you see those plans are. You can see that things are showing up on these lists that kind of align with plans that have been kind of presented to the select board, we've never, had asked the citizens to, approve the 5-year capital plan, for instance, or even, I think the master plan hasn't been voted on, right? So can you just talk a little bit about the how authoritative you think these plans are, and how easy it is to diverge from them?
Do you want to take the master plan implementation piece of that? Because I know that one of the last phases of the master plan committee's work was implementation steps. And I don't know that we've actually connected the dots between some of those steps and the things that, that we're talking about as budget items now, or maybe Kate could address it too.
Yeah, Kate can help us, but can you scroll to where the plans are, Michelle?
Yeah,
Emergency plan, I
we've
think.
talked a decent amount about the master plan, so we're prepared to talk about that, I think. I think just in general, Finn is asking not necessarily how it ties to it, but how rigid are these plans? So like the 5-year plan, right, I alluded to like how things kind of show up. They're not on the plan and they show up and we fund them anyway.
Right,
Or vice
or there
versa.
was, it's discussion about solar, solar power for the town hall, right, as, substantial expense. It fits with a lot with the master plan, but it's fairly expensive. And so, these fairly substantial things kind of piecemeal show up on the capital list, or they're anticipating. And so they're big numbers. There's been huge involvement of the community to pull together the master plan and trying to get a lot of voices, but it's, I don't recall ever seeing it as a warrant article, say, that it was approved or something like that. So I'm just trying to figure how you guys, as a select board, decide, what wants to prioritize and how to fit that in.
So the master plan is a statutory requirement, and it's under the planning board's purview to have the master plan process completed and to actually put together the master plan. After it's completed, I think some towns still have it under the purview of the planning board, or it can transition to the select board, or you can put together an implementation committee. But the plan itself is statutorily required, as are the components that are part of the plan. So that's why towns typically hire consultants who understand the master planning process and the regulations in Massachusetts to guide the process and make sure the plan adheres to what's required by the state. So the point, and they're supposed to be done, I believe, every 10 years, and ours was a 60-year gap. So we were long overdue to do the master plan process. I mean, the intent is that it is an operative document, so that it's a comprehensive process that involves the townspeople, includes staff. We had a process where we talked to as many constituents as possible, and we're guided by the consultants to sort of compile all of it, sift through it, prioritize, come up with the goals and objectives. But it's a substantial plan, right? There's a lot of objectives in the plan. So then when you transition to implementation, there's still a lot of work to be done to figure out actually how you go about doing this and breaking it down and creating some sort of step functions, basically, to what are you going to do first and who's going to do it and so forth. So we've done that to some extent with, and Kate, you can certainly come up and talk about it also, but we've done some prioritization because it's also, over time, this is not a one-year implementation, right? So we had to find places to start. And so some of the things that have been appearing on the capital plan, and I think even the HDC guidelines, these are all stemming from the master plan, and we're trying to work through to prioritize what happens over time. But I wouldn't say the whole thing has been distilled in terms of the order of operations.
How much attention is being given to the recommendation to increase the tax base and increase revenue? Because one of my concerns is it's easy to spend money, but it's hard to come up with ways to implement generating new revenue, new tax base. And related to that is the question of how does the Historic Commission Vibrancy Plan dovetail into the master plan and into this question of how we're going to get more revenue into town?
The way we've been approaching it is, we kind of like Deirdre said, we try to distill down into a couple different buckets. So we did, we have green initiatives. And again, I agree that the solar kind of popped up out of nowhere, but that was driven by the federal tax credit that we tried to take advantage of, right? Didn't end up working out. I think the effort was, well worth it to try to make because it would have been some pretty big savings if we could have accomplished it. Unfortunately, we didn't. But I think with that we're going into further planning on solar and a roadmap on how exactly to get to that net zero carbon impact. But then we're doing the Complete Streets project. So part of the master plan was to enhance the town's safety, walkability, and accessibility to its parks and trails and street signage and crosswalks and all that type of stuff. So that's the Complete Streets program that you see talked about, and one of the requests here is for engineering. That's about $1 million grant, but some of the engineering that is required to access that money is not covered by the $1 million. So that's why we're requesting the $50,000. And as it relates to economic development, we have a few things going on. So it highlighted, we have an HDC. Everybody knows that. They have a relative lot of power in, what kind of developments are going to go in the historic district. They don't have a uniform set of guidelines that they apply uniformly to people who want to develop in the downtown. So a developer is at the mercy of the makeup of the committee, There's really no uniformity in the rules they apply, the type of materials they allow, things like that. So we do want to promote economic development downtown, but certainly a first step is to make sure we have guidelines that are, accessible, easy to understand, and also don't overly prevent the development of the economic development in the downtown. We also have the downtown vitalization study, and that ties closely to last year we had a $50,000 economic development study that was funded through town. So we've been going through that process, and we realized how closely the economic development study is going to tie to the downtown revitalization, because downtown revitalization is part of the economic development study. So by asking for that this year, it gives us the flexibility to pursue both projects simultaneously, if it makes sense, or even possibly have one vendor who specializes in both areas do it together, so we have one comprehensive product. But the economic development study is part of the master plan that you talked about raising tax money. So with that, Kay can go into the intricate details of it, but really we're looking at the whole town, not just the downtown, and identifying areas and also uses that are compatible with the community, right? Because we could come up with a plan that's going to generate, the most amount of money possible, and it's, makes all the sense in the world from a financial perspective. But then you bring it to town meeting, and the community, rightfully so, it's their community, but the community's like, yeah, no way, we're not going to have that. So we're trying to, through these studies and community outreach, we're trying to produce a economic development package that the community supports, so that we can actually implement it and grow the tax base. And so, Kay, if you want to talk a little bit about the economic development study, and then specifically how it dovetails into the revitalization.
Yeah, I think you pretty much said it all. One of the other things I want to mention is that the town, for the master plan, they put in $125,000 for that plan, and then we received a grant for $75,000. So it was a $200,000 plan. Since that plan's been implemented, now that we have this roadmap, we have gone and applied for other grants. So we applied for a $425,000 land grant, and then we applied, and that was specifically from the master plan, and we applied for a subdivision rules and regulations grant to revamp our subdivision rules and regulations that have not been looked at since 1984. And because we have the master plan, when we apply for these grants, we have these extra points, and we would not have gotten these grants without having the master plan. So we did put $125,000 in the master plan, but the town has gained almost $500,000 in grant revenue from that. So I know it seems like we're doing a lot of planning and not a lot of implementation, but I think you guys are seeing this planning piece because it's so close after the master plan was finished, so we have to do the next steps. For example, for the economic development piece, once we get through the planning part and the downtown vitalization, we'll have a roadmap that will prioritize what we need to do and what grants we need to go for. And then when we go for those grants, we will have those extra points, and we'll be definitely able to obtain more of those grants, as we've seen from the master plan. We've never gotten so many grants since we did the master plan, so.
What if you come up with a plan for the economic development, and then the historical commission doesn't like it? I'm sort of scratching my head amongst these different groups as to, and sometimes it seems they may be working at cross purposes.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Jared. It is not an easy thing to do to get these plans done, and that's why we do a lot of community outreach. So the Historic District Commission will be part of that committee.
Because I think we approved $50,000 for them for a study or a, okay, and then the economic development is how much?
50.
Okay, I don't know, it just seems maybe if we could merge the two, the energies of the two, and perhaps the cost, it would be worth doing.
Well, the $50,000 to HCC, that is to establish regulatory guidelines, to put down on paper what we really want, rather than people's opinions that may change from one committee meeting to the next. So that is really a administrative thing to get that process in place that's been missing there and other places in town previously. The vitalization is, a forward-looking view of what we're going to do next once we determine what resources are available. And my look on the master plan, too, is getting back to the original question is, certainly the master plan is not 100% compulsory, because at some point it meets up against the realities of annual budgets and capital limitations. And certainly in Wenham here too, there's a lot of aspirational items in there, but we do realize that there's limits on developable land left, acreage, and you always run into the concerns that we've seen last year of, not in my neighborhood, or there's groups that oppose certain aspects of it. So it is a long process that you have to work through. But I think finally we do have a plan that guides the town moving forward, which was missing 5, 10, and 20 years ago, where everything was done, okay, we'll just do 1 year at a time, and we've seen it hasn't worked that way. It just makes us fall back.
The plan, I understand, the long-term plan for the town, but $100,000 for the historical commission and economic vitalization in this kind of environment, I'm scratching my head.
But I think, that's the realities of the marketplace today.
Well, I think just a couple points. I think, some of the areas of town that are probably the most likely to be developed over the next 5 years and generate substantial tax revenue will have no HDC role whatsoever, because they have no jurisdiction over the Iron Rail property, the Penguin Hall property, Boulder Lane, if that's developed under 3A. They may have a piece of the Zero Larch property that's the other 3A parcel. So, their jurisdiction is limited to just the historic district, which is essentially Main Street, and to exterior features. So, I don't want to make them the boogeyman, and blame them for development that hasn't happened, because I don't think that's particularly fair. And the $50,000 that I was a little skeptical of the amount last year, but I've kind of come around on it myself, because as has been pointed out, it's to try to create guidelines and standards that will make the approval process in front of the HDC more transparent to developers and homeowners who are coming before them. So I think that that's a good thing, and probably would promote smart development where it falls within the HDC's jurisdiction. The other thing I would add is that I think all of the planning and the grants and the other things that are going on that Kate's described and Steve's described, I think combined with other conditions that are in place, that I do think makes it much more likely that we're actually going to be able to execute on some of these, smart development proposals, as long as there are developers who want to come in and do it. But I think the conditions are there, the local conditions that we talked about, and then also at the state level. The state zoning statute, Chapter 40A, was amended in August 2024 to make it a lot more difficult for abutters and sort of, NIMBY opponents to projects to succeed. There are now appeal bond requirements of up to $250,000. This is an area that I've, spent a lot of my day job working in, but the courts can impose bonds at very high amounts that they couldn't impose before against appeals of projects that aren't really meritorious coming out of the box, and that's already resulted in a lot of appeals getting thrown out of court earlier than usual. If you look at Maplewoods, the Harbor Light project that I think has been a smashing success, and both from a tax revenue perspective and for senior housing, and it's been a good addition to the community in West Wenham, that was bogged down in the courts through abutter appeals for about 4 or 5 years. But Harbor Light sort of saw that through, and they were able to build it. That the conditions are such in the state that those kinds of delays are also going to be less likely. So in my mind, I think the environment is pretty good and probably better than it's ever been for the last 25 or 30 years in Wenham to actually see, some fruit being borne in our plans, so.
So let's say-
We're being very careful of what we're asking you for. So like with the $50,000 for the complete streets, that comes with $38,000 from the state for a prioritization plan for safety corridors around town. And also, we can get up to $1 million to implement those plans. So yes, we'll have a prioritization plan of 15 or 20 things in town that we want to prioritize, but it also comes with real funding. So the only thing that it doesn't 100% come with is those design costs. I did speak to a couple contractors, and they think the cost would not even be around $50,000, but we'd have to go through the plan first.
Deirdre,
So, yeah, I just wanted to add, based on Bob's question, I mean, the issue of expanding the tax base and raising revenue was certainly front and center throughout the entirety of the master plan process, and something we wrangled with. The issue is that there aren't easy answers to it, right? And Wenham doesn't have a tremendous amount of land that is usable, buildable, and so forth. There's inherent tensions between the desire to develop and raise revenue and land preservation and to not overbuild the town. And, you know, those are the questions we struggled with tremendously, trying to find a balance. But we have limited resources in terms of land, which is why the places where we do have opportunity are so important, like Iron Rail, like Penguin Hall, and so forth. So it's not that that wasn't a huge issue and front and center the entire time. It's that there aren't easy solutions, but some of the ways we try to get at some solutions is to do some of this work. You know, we needed more input on the potential economic development of the downtown. It's not obvious here either how that can be done. You know, there's a lot of constraints, space, wetlands, so forth. You know, there aren't easy answers, unfortunately.
I wasn't suggesting was easy. What I was going to suggest is I think there's a need to integrate these items into a long-range financial plan, how the pieces fit together. And we're starting some work on the committee looking at some of the issues, and I think it's important because otherwise we're going to raise the taxes and drive more people away.
Agreed. And I think that was the reasoning behind wanting to do an economic plan following the master plan, because we couldn't get close enough to real solutions. So there's still a lot of work to be done.
All right, any other comments, questions? Anybody online who is sticking their hand up? Good, okay. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
So Steve, I think we've probably covered the landscape.
I would say so.
Here.
I mean, hopefully everyone got their questions. We can continue our deliberations and tomorrow and into the future. Same with the select board. I just want to remind folks that we're meeting 2 weeks in a row on the 24th, I believe, of February. Is it the last Tuesday? And then on March 3rd, sorry, I'm going off memory, I'm horrible with dates. But
Steve, can you start that over again?
yeah, the last Tuesday in February and the first Tuesday.
So we're not meeting on the 17th?
No, I think we moved it out 1 week because of school break.
Okay.
And we agreed that we probably should do that as well, because then it gives us 2 opportunities to get together relatively close together, and that, because on that 3rd, the hard deadline from the printer is the 4th. So everything has to be finalized and buttoned up with recommendations. Well, I guess recommendations don't have to have, because there is some history there that some recommendations come at town meeting. But certainly the capital plan contents, the budget, and all the articles that we have out here today have to be completed, commentary, drafted, approved, and through by the 3rd. Hopefully a bulk of that will be done at the meeting before, so we're not putting it all together the very next day. But
So we're anticipating votes on at least partial effort, you know,
Yeah, so
as
I'll
many
be-
warrants as we can on the 24th?
Yes, and I'll be meeting with the FinCom in the next couple of Wednesdays, and hopefully we can get through, the kind of the way I envisioned it is get through the, the relatively straightforward stuff. I think there's gonna be some conversation when we get to the finish line around, we have, I think it's roughly $65,000 out there over the levy limit. There's going to be probably some talk about how we wanna get over the finish line as to avoiding an override.
Well, that's
going
specific
for an
just for
override.
the town, that's not for.
Yeah, just specific for the town. Do we want to move? We've talked about components about possibly reducing, CPA funding to, as like an exchange for, whatever 0.5% of the CPA equates to $100,000. So out of your pocket would be the same money, and it would cover the override. To go that way by keeping the override and kind of like making the messaging that way, just going for the override and packaging it with the schools, moving further cuts into the budget, moving OPEB or stabilization, annual OPEB or annual stabilization contribution out of the reoccurring operating budget into a free cash appropriation. Those are some of the things we've been talking about. But I think it's going to probably be a decision made on the 24th ultimately, but hopefully, the FinCom, we can get there by then and be ready to have a recommendation for the select board. How you guys best think to move forward.
We've had a really productive meeting last Wednesday, went through a lot of the operating budget and got very comfortable with it. As you said, we are within striking distance of being able to say that any override that that we're asking for folks to vote for at the town meeting is not coming from the town. We will consider pulling a few levers that associated that there might be considered a little more controversial, like the trash. Pulling a couple tens of thousands of dollars out of the stabilization fund so that the increase in trash costs. So there are a few little tweaks to the budget that are going on that allow us to be able to say that, but it's part of the messaging kind of decision as the two towns and the school committee prepare for these meetings to exactly how do we present the what is set to be an override ask from the citizens. Ask the citizens, do you want to support this, right? Do you also support these increases?
And on the 24th, we'll also confirm the date of the town meeting.
Yes. And we'll be following up, probably, there may be a need for, I call it emergency, but we'll be able to schedule it with the 48 hours of just a quick, let's see how the things pan out through the end of this week.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have dates and we feel like we want to move, like behind the scenes, it may be worth to call a quick Zoom meeting to vote to change the location or date or whatever we're going to do, just so we can get that information out in official capacity sooner rather than later.
Well, Steve, in the past, you have send out a schedule, right? And as you update that, it's really helpful to see all that laid out on a regular basis at every FinCom meeting, just to say, these are the things that we have to achieve on these dates and keep them.
That calendar that I emailed, is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
that sort of thing is very useful, just like starting the meeting to understand where we are financially, and here's the calendar, keeps us marching really well.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, I like calendars.
I couldn't survive without it, so.
Love and hate. I hate being tied to it, but I love it to keep me.
Are we done?
Keep me organized. Yeah.
If the FinCom wants to adjourn first, and then we'll.
Any other topics from the FinCom? Nope. Then I'll look for a motion to.
Are we gonna meet tomorrow?
I think we are scheduled to meet tomorrow.
Yeah, might as well.
Let's just double check. If it's not on the.
Yeah, I did.
town
I
calendar-
posted
There's
it.
notice, it's just a question of whether we wanted to cancel.
Yeah, that was right. You're right. Thanks, Bob. Yeah, so we posted on Monday, so we're fine to meet. And then the couple questions came up of whether it's worth meeting 2 nights in a row. If everybody wanted to, I said I'm available either way. Let me know. We can always cancel the posting and pull it down. We can post appropriately. That's not a problem. No OML concerns. So it's really up to the committee. I mean, I'm available. You guys did, like you said, you did a very productive meeting. I don't know if you want to be here 2 nights in a row till 9 o'clock I guess it'd be Zoom, but
I think the next kind of thing that we're gonna be trying to figure out is the language that we'd be putting into the warrant book.
Well, I think we also need to talk a little bit about the long-term
Right, we're
implications
working on that.
in terms of, are we gonna be rolling ourselves into another override next year? So in terms of how that plays out.
So, specific to override next year and where that might be coming from, you know, the thing that I've heard from people that are on the school or the town is that it's really hard to predict, you know, how likely that is, right? And so, you know, being able to say how likely that is up in the air, right? We may have some of this development that we were just talking about that might be putting injections in. If someone puts in a large, you know, says they want to do a very large, senior living facility, they often put in, you know, some funding towards ambulances, right? These sorts of things will suddenly make it so that we may or may not be in an override. It's hard to predict.
Yeah, that's an argument, though, against organizations doing long-range planning, and I've been working with those folks for decades doing that. So I think, you know, we need to do something.
Yeah, I hear you. So I think that that has been a topic that we've talked about is long-term capital planning. I think that's something that we should be considering, right? We have all these buildings, we're talking about a building stabilization fund, right? We know that these things are coming down the pike, and being able to put that, I would say we definitely need to spend time.
Yeah, and also how free cash is used in terms of policies related there too.
Mm-hmm.
That's all ties together.
yeah, I mean, you know, bigger discussion that it's going to happen in the next month, but you know, the draft financial policies are with the FinCom, so work on getting those through. You know, as part of that is if it's financial forecasting and the anticipation of an override to, you know, I always use Arlington as a good example of a forward-thinking community as far as financials, is they plan to grow, you know, education at 5% and general government at 4% every year, and they plan their override every 5 years to fund that strategy. So I mean, that could come out of a financial policy that the town utilizes to help build its budget every year, and funding mechanisms through town meeting, and also messaging to the community. But that's, you know.
So it sounds like you'd really like to meet tomorrow and
Yeah.
go a few things. Okay, so we'll hold it for now. Okay. Any other discussion?
We gonna do Zoom tomorrow, sorry?
Yes.
Okay. No.
Okay, then, looking for a motion to close the Wenham FinCom here at 8:23.
So moved.
Right, we got a second, any discussion?
Aye.
So I will vote aye.
Aye.
Jared, aye.
David, I.
David, aye.
Sarah, I.
Sarah, so that's all 5 of us, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Entertain a motion to adjourn the select board meeting.
One quick question for Steve. For the
Yep.
24th, can we get actual numbers for the reserve accounts, OPEB and so forth, just how they're looking?
Yeah, I have actually. I have all that. I will.
All right.
What was the
Just send it
stabilization?
out.
Their stabilization was 2.1. Remember what it was?
Anyhow, maybe just send it around.
So about 8.5% of total budget. It was because we put that extra $500,000 in instead of like when we got the grant for the HVAC. But yeah, and I have the OPEB stuff on my desk, so I can send that around tomorrow.
Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn, 8:24
seconds.
PM.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye, thank you.